I can't do it.
Okay.
We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. It. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Thing sucks.
Here we go once again. Oh my God, it sounds so bad. Excuse me. Yeah, my voice is probably going to go during this show. How bad does it sound? It is very Jen Cohen-like. This will be officially the Jen Cohen Daily Puck Drop here on January 7th, 10:01. We are... It's so bad. I've been practicing this all morning, and I didn't realize how bad it was going to be. We are in the Puck Sports Studios, of course, built by Limback Lumber. Hi, my name's Peter Brady, and I'm Jen Cohen combined. This will probably be the lowest watch show and listen show that we've ever had. Here's the problem. When you combine, let me hit up the voice tracker there. When you combine being sick for a week and then yesterday you had your very first middle school basketball practice and you're yelling and screaming at a bunch of 11 and 12-year-olds, this is the result. I knew halfway through practice when we're like, let's do it. I can't even yell. Let's do it again. I'm like, oh, geez, it's gone. So welcome in. My name's Jen Cohen. Thank you for joining us in the Limback Lumber Studios. Contractors, they've got everything, free deliveries, full house packages to homeowner DIY projects. Largest stock moldings in the Northwest, old school service. They've been doing it since 1930. Give Limback Lumber a call, 206-782-3487. Visit them online at limbacklumber.com. You will get a refund for today's show. I apologize. Coming up on the show today, we're going to let these guys talk the entire show. Danny Kelly will join us in about 13 minutes from now. Danny, you couldn't get here soon enough. And then after we talk to Danny about everything that happened with Ryan Grubb, where do the Seahawks go now? Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, Mike McDonald. Not a really ringing endorsement by Mike McDonald on Geno Smith. We'll talk to John Canzano back at his regular scheduled time at around 10:45. We'll talk all things college football with John. So much going on in the sport. Oregon collapse. Who does he like in the semifinals? He wrote just this non-sports wonderful piece about a teacher that he had back in high school that was just fabulous. And then also we'll talk about my interview and just get his thoughts on Ann McCoy and what she said to me last week. And we can talk about the Cougs. The Cougs, I'm telling you, hey, Cougar fans, give me 30 seconds. I know a lot of you aren't Cougar fans. Give me 30 seconds on this one. They've added another running back today from San Diego State, from South Dakota State. I think this is like the fourth running back they've added. And then on top of all the running backs that they have on the roster still, right? Shenblaker stayed. Payne is back. Who am I? I'm blanking on one more. One more guy is still there. He'll come to me in a second. And this is going to be, I'm just warning, this is going to be a new look Cougar football team next year on offense. This is not going to be the air raid anymore. And I know there's some Cougar fans that are a little worried about what it's going to look like next season. But we'll get into that with Canzano at 10:45. God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that it's so bad. I literally, this morning, have been like practicing in the mirror and trying to talk, and it sounded fine. But right when we started the show, it just like went away. We'll bear through it together, all right? All right? We'll send this show to Jen Cohen herself. She'll love it. Before Danny Kelly comes on, and again, we'll get his thoughts on all things that happened yesterday with the Seahawks. It was just a wild day with Ryan Grubb getting fired. And I guess, you'll look back on it, not unexpected that Ryan Grubb lost his job. It was something that a few weeks ago, actually about a month ago, we had Mike Garafolo on, and I asked Mike, I said, hey, what are the possibilities this is a one and done for him? And he said it's very much on the table. This could be it. And it's something that they will look at the end of the season. And so ultimately Mike and others were right that they decided to move on. Wherever the differences in philosophy that were between Grubb and McDonald, I mean, clearly only those two guys will know what changed from the interview process, getting to know each other. They obviously didn't have a relationship before all of this and just developed a relationship in 13 days or something after McDonald got hired. This is a strong influence by John Schneider to hire Ryan Grubb. And make no mistake, Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, those two guys were the hottest coaching names out there. I mean, Ryan Grubb was the hottest offensive coordinator in football. And so when they made the hire, I think everybody in Seattle loved the move, whether you were a Husky fan or a non-Husky fan. I mean, I loved the move. I absolutely loved it. I mean, even before they made it official, we talked about it. I wanted them to hire Ryan Grubb. I saw the things that he did at Washington, and I thought there would be a carryover to the NFL. I thought he would incorporate more of a running scheme as well. I mean, there were times when he was at Washington that they did not run, and they were a pass-heavy team, but there were also moments when they did lean on the running game, and it was fantastic. And his second year in Fresno State, they had two running backs that were over 700 yards. I was perfectly confident that he would be able to adapt and have a more run-style approach in the NFL. Not to be like 50-50. Would they be 60-40, 65-35? Like, what would it be? What would it be? What would the kind of the breakdown look like in terms of what they were going to do offensively? I mean, I think it's the passing. Did they drop back? I think Curtis told me yesterday, 68% of the time they drop back to pass. If you take away the quarterback scrambles, and again, which they factor that in, you take that stuff away. Yeah, I mean, they dropped back, and they were a very pass-heavy football team. Now, was that because Ryan Grubb looked at the offensive line and decided, I just can't. We can't run. We can't run consistently. Or is his default just to be a pass guy? He's on the open market looking for a job. He'll land. He's a good offensive mind. Obviously, he did wonders this year with Geno Smith. I know the picks were up, but, I mean, there was, JSN had a career year and all that. So I think there was some good that Ryan Grubb did. But, again, if they didn't match up, their philosophies, McDonald and Grubb just didn't match up, and McDonald just couldn't work with them any further, then you make a move. And I get it. Hell, maybe they didn't like each other. I don't know. I mean, there was never a courting period between the two because there was no history. Maybe they ultimately just said, I really don't like him, and I can't really work with him anymore. So that could be it. That could be part of it. The one thing that we addressed yesterday, though, and I was texting with a couple of people, yesterday afternoon about this as well, and I'll just be consistent with this. You don't say that there's no blame on Mike McDonald and John Schneider for this, though. And let me just take Mike McDonald for a second. I mean, it's a good first year. It's a successful season, the 10-7. They got 10 wins in his first year. We'll take that all the time. But again, it comes back to, if you wanted one of your coaches to do something specifically, and you were becoming increasingly annoyed by it as each week passed, then you pull him inside, you're the head coach, and you read him the riot act. And then at some point, if there's a breaking point, let's say it's the Giants game. I know that's been written about. Let's say it was the Giants game, that was the breaking point, or just one of them. Then you just say to Ryan Grubb, Ryan, either you start running the ball more like I've been telling you to do, or I'm going to replace you right now with whoever on the staff. I don't know. Maybe he did do that. Maybe he wasn't that forceful. Maybe he just let this whole thing play out. But, we've had this debate. We did this with Pete Carroll. When Pete Carroll, I mean, what I watched Mike McDonald every single week in a press conference complain about the offense and complaining about we didn't run the ball enough. That is a rinse and repeat for the last 5+ years that we had Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll did the same thing after every game in the press conference. Wow, we just didn't run the ball enough. Well, you're the coach. Pull whoever the coordinator was, Shane Waldron, Bevel, Brian Schottenheimer, and tell them to run the ball. I mean, you're the head coach, and I would say the same thing to Mike McDonald. Again, maybe he was more forceful than we know behind the scenes in trying to get that done. But, I mean, again, he does share some of the blame for what transpired this year with his offense. He does. He has to. He has to share some blame in that. He's got to share some blame, and maybe that's some of the things that he learned as a head coach this year. Hey, I've got to be more forceful. I've got to be more, set in my ways, that this is the way that I want it. I mean, he's done it. He's shown it. Didn't like the linebackers, so he replaced them. And that's one thing I do like about him, is that he does recognize that when there is a problem, that he does not hesitate to make a move. Does not. Whether it's the right or wrong move, we'll find out with Ryan Grubb. It certainly was the right move with the linebacker situation. But this hire, whoever that they hire, it's going to pave the future of Mike Macdonald, because we can get just this turnstile of offensive coordinators in left and right. And then how much do they swing the pendulum here to a pass-heavy guy to now swinging it to, are we going to go 50-50? They can't run it. Are they going to run it like the Ravens did? They don't have a running quarterback at all. So they're not going to implement, is Greg Roman still the offensive coordinator there? I can't remember. Or is he with the Chargers now? They're not going to implement the Ravens running style. So I'm going to be curious to see how much that they swing the other way. And again, you've got all these skill position players now that are entering their, some their fourth, others their third, like we talked about yesterday with Geno Smith, his third offensive coordinator now, since the time he's been the starting quarterback. Whether, I don't even know if he's going to be the starting quarterback. Mike Macdonald certainly yesterday didn't give the guy a ringing endorsement to be the quarterback moving forward. Hey, is he? You bring him back? Yeah, I guess. Think about how much praise throughout this football season that Mike Macdonald has given Geno Smith. Think about that. After all these games, as a warrior, leader, heartbeat of our team. I'm paraphrasing. He's the biggest competitor we out there. Great leadership. Carries the team on his back. Geno did everything this week in the game. And then when he's asked yesterday about, hey, he's going to bring him back, this guy that you've been singing praises for all season long? I guess. Okay. So I don't know. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that Geno Smith comes back. I don't know how anybody definitively can say that he's going to 100% come back, that they have to bring him back. Now, you can have an opinion, hey, I think they should bring him back and it should be a team-friendly deal, and I can get on board with that. I can get him on board with a team-friendly deal that covers 25 and then maybe a little bit of 26, but at least gives you an out in 26. Yeah, I can get behind that. I think a lot of people can, but not big money. They can't commit big money to this guy. And I think that's one thing that they will not do, is not commit big money to him. All right, we'll talk to Danny Kelly coming up in about a few minutes from now. John Canzano, again, coming up at 10:45. You're just joining us here on the Daily Puck Drop. Yes, the voice is gone. Been sick for about a week, and then yesterday we had middle school basketball practice, and just yelling, and not yelling at them, just yelling things. It is gone. But great group of kids. They listened, ran everything right, did great. It's going to be a fun season there for the Whitman Wildcats. We'll send out the schedule. We're going to come out and watch us, all right? We're going to be taking down everybody. Jane Addams, we're coming for you. Eckstein, coming for you. But great group of kids. It was fun to get middle school basketball underway yesterday. We're going to get to the Mariners quickly. I'm going to say one thing here about Geno Smith. You know how much Mike Macdonald praised him, and I think for the most part, Geno had a good season this year. I'm not going to overreact too much to this, but I do think it showed a little bit of poor leadership yesterday from Geno Smith. And you're going to ask, well, what are you talking about? Yesterday was their clean out day where they all go to the facility, they stuff all their stuff in a big black garbage sack and go on their way. The fact that he and JSN, offensive players, and I know that they just found out. I know that they found out 35 or 40 minutes before that thing opened up. But to not go in there and talk to the media, especially when you're the quarterback, when your offensive coordinator the day before you just sang the praises for, and now he's been fired, how are you going to react? Does this affect what your future with Seattle is? I think the quarterback, the guy that is the heartbeat, the beacon of your football team, any football team, needs to go out there and talk. DK declined to talk. I think that's another poor leadership. I just do. Maybe I'm overreacting to it. I just think that guys like that need to step up and speak, because what it did yesterday because we had Tim Booth on, Curtis Crabtree on, and they came on the show once they got off the locker room cleanout. The deal is you have offensive linemen talking. Like Abe Lucas, was it Tomlinson also that had to talk yesterday? Charles Cross, like those guys. I mean, they're offensive linemen, not the leaders of your football team. They're not the quarterback that's going to be asking for $50 million in the offseason. Like those guys got to be present. All right, got to be present for that. So I was a little disappointed yesterday there in some of those leaders on that offense. They shouldn't be the ones. The offensive line shouldn't be the ones talking about Ryan Grubb. And then the Scott Huff situation. Is he staying put? I don't know. They were kind of vague on that yesterday. Is Scott Huff going to remain the offensive line coach? What if the new offensive coordinator you hire is bringing in his own offensive line coach? So you're going to get rid of Scott Huff? Okay, so now how many different offensive line coaches have we gone through now? I mean, my God, the Seahawks and their search for offensive coordinators and offensive line coaches, God, can they just find somebody, a consistent offensive line coach and a consistent offensive coordinator? We're going to be talking to Danny Kelly here momentarily. Danny's in the green room. Danny, I don't know if you can hear me. Thumbs up if you can hear me. You're ready to go, Danny. It's his camera, he says, is acting weird on him. One quick note before we get to the Danny Kelly segment on the Mariners. Rooker yesterday signs a deal, an extension to stay with the A's. It's like $60 million. It's going to be worth up to like $90 million if he hits all these incentives. Do you know your Oakland A's have spent roughly $130 million this offseason on players? Rooker and then free agents. Your Mariners have spent zero. Like, what are they doing? Like, it's almost to a point now with them. And I'm going to try and be positive and looking forward to the baseball season starting in a while, because it brings all these are some of my favorite guests back. Jim Duquette's back, Bill Kruger, Brad Adam, Ryan Divish. Hopefully we're going to add a few more pieces. So I can't wait for it. It's going to start, probably mid to late February. And so looking forward to that. But man, I mean, what are we going to do? I mean, the likelihood they get Roki Sasaki, slim to none. Hae-Sung Kim, who they just missed out on, what was that, last week from the Dodgers? I mean, it's like Gavin Lux traded yesterday to the to the Reds. I mean, they're running out of options to do. And my biggest fear, and I was talking we have a group chat that goes on YouTube and X, but also we have another group chat for the Pucks Posse community membership. Oh, by the way, you can sign up $5 a month. You get full VIP content up at Puck Sports. And I asked a question in that chat this morning. My biggest fear is that they panic, they trade Castillo and get duped on the Castillo deal because they got no other options. That's my biggest fear. All right, we're going to get to Danny Kelly here. But here we got a brand new open for my segment talking football with Danny Kelly. Ladies and gentlemen, brought to you by Georgetown Brewery.
Drink Georgetown Tavern Beer, your new locally brewed domestic-style lager. 4.2% alcohol, cheap, good, local.
That's what I'm talking about. Georgetown Brewery is the proud sponsor of this segment where I get to talk football with my good friend, Danny Kelly. The Georgetown Tavern Beer now available for you. Easy drinking domestic-style lager made with Pacific Northwest barley and Yakima Valley hops. 4.2%. Brewed by my good friends at Georgetown Brewing, makers of Manny's Pale Ale and Bodie Zaffa IPA. Ladies and gentlemen, I got to stop talking because I sound like Jen Cohen, who's smoked 15,000 cigarettes right now. Danny Kelly from The Ringer. Follow him on Twitter and Blue Sky, Danny B. Kelly, senior staff writer at The Ringer, Ringer Fantasy Football Show, Ringer NFL Draft Show. How bad does it sound? Because in my ears, I sound terrible.
Your voice? It's a little scratchy, but nothing too bad. Nothing too bad.
A week of being sick, and then yesterday, an hour and a half of middle school basketball practice. That'll do it to you.
Yeah, just yelling. It's that time of year.
Cut to the hoop, you son of a bitch.
Block out.
Block out. Yeah, God, if someone doesn't block out, I'm gonna strangle him this year. I'm gonna go full Bobby Knight. Just kidding, parents.
Throw a chair on the court. Yeah.
Not doing any of that. All right. Well, surprised they fired him, Ryan Grubb?
I wouldn't say surprised. I would say maybe 51% surprised. I was very curious what they were going to do with this whole situation coming off of this season. I think obviously, before it happened and then after it happened, as we're sort of debriefing and more stuff is coming out, it seemed pretty clear that McDonald and Grubb didn't have a unified vision on what they want to do. Man, this sounds so familiar, doesn't it? With the run game stuff, not running enough. Being more balanced. It's going back to the shoddy days, the Darrell Bevel days.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It was I just said it earlier. It was the last 5+ years of listening to Pete Carroll after every game. We got to run the ball more. Well, I don't know. Run the ball more then. You're the coach. And then Mike McDonald did the same thing this year.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, it's tough because on one hand, do they have the offensive line to really commit to the run? And that to me is the big question is are we just going to slam our heads into the wall all game, or are we going to kind of, go with what's working at any given time during a game and kind of feel it out and go that route? And I think ultimately there was probably a couple of games where Grubb didn't run the ball as much as the plan had been, or what McDonald wanted him to do. And so that was a big factor. But I think also it's just there's starting to be whispers the personality wasn't exactly a fit, and maybe they just didn't see eye to eye on culture and all that stuff. So I think there's things like that too, but I think ultimately it's the run game stuff just really kind of doomed Grubb, and honestly it was so frustrating to watch, especially in the short yardage red zone, just not being able to run the ball at all. The sequencing that he was using, in those situations was kind of frustrating as well. So, not super surprised. I was a little bummed because I think there were some things I did like that he did, in the screen game and the passing game. But ultimately, yeah, the run thing is kind of what doomed him.
Yeah, because I'm kind of with you, Danny, that I was really excited for Ryan Grubb. We would talk a lot about this when they made the hire. I was more excited about Ryan Grubb coming in and the offense than I was about Mike McDonald with the defense.
Yeah.
Because I didn't see the parts on the defense. I wasn't in love with what they had done on the defensive line. Certainly wasn't in love with their linebacking core.
Right.
And so I'm thinking, well, I don't know. I think they're going to struggle, and I think it's going to be a real big learning curve. But I looked at the offense, and I did it with the caveat every time of if they can somehow just improve the line a little bit, then I think this offense with their
just
playmakers,
an average line.
Yeah, Geno, look at the guys they have as wide receivers. Very, a really good running back in Ken Walker, and I think a very capable backup there in Charbonnet. And I was very hopeful that they were going to put up some big time numbers. Started off good, but then it just plateaued, and then it kind of crashed and never got any better.
It's kind of, and it's kind of funny. I had the same sort of impression in the offseason, oh, this is going to be fun. We're going to be high flying, push the ball down the field. It's going to be a great fit for Geno. I think it's going to be good for all the different weapons in the offense. And it started out strong and then really petered out at the end of the season. I was the confidence level in the offense was kind of low, and inversely, the defense started out, obviously I think the first 3 games they looked good, but then we started to see what the real defense looked like against good quarterbacks. And I was oh God, this defense is not good. People started talking about, oh, do we miss Pete Carroll yet? You know what I mean? Remember in the middle of the season,
and everybody had the same gif with the with the top hat on, chewing the gum, walking down the sideline.
But by the end of the year, I think the defense was clearly the strength of this team. It finished top 10 in DVOA in terms of the efficiency of the defensive squad. So really, really strong showing, really exciting momentum for the defensive side of the ball. And it just felt like the offense stagnated really hard. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm very curious, who they going to hire? It just feels like the Seahawks have been cycling through offensive coordinators forever. And obviously, that's kind of the nature of the league. There are basically zero other than Ben Johnson in Detroit. There are basically zero long tenured offensive coordinators. And I'm saying play calling offensive coordinators.
And this is I don't want to, because they said this before, so I don't want to make it seem like it's revisionist history. But one of the things why, and again, I know that the word came out, he didn't interview well and all that. But one of the things why, at least I was advocating for a Ben Johnson type, right? I mean, if they would have hired Ben Johnson, this certainly would have been a more run-first approach with him as the head coach. The reason I advocated for that was you look at the league and who the head coaches are, right? Most of them are offensive-minded coaches, most of them.
Right.
And because of the simple truth is, if you have an offensive-minded coach, he most likely is going to call the plays, or at least have a coordinator underneath him that has his vision and system, right?
Right.
So you don't have to replace those guys. The problem when you go with a defensive-minded coach like McDonald is he's got to go out and find an offensive coordinator that mirrors what he wants to do offensively. But the second that guy's got any success, a year, he's gone. Because why? Because that's what they're hiring. So they're just going to hire him away because that guy wants to be a head coach.
Yep.
So this is where I feel that we're just going to be in the same merry-go-round that we were with Pete Carroll.
Right.
You're just running through offensive coordinators every 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're going to, and then you run into the issue too, like this is of course down the line and not necessarily something they have to worry about right now. It's like if and when you get a good quarterback, a good young quarterback, you're going to be switching up offensive coordinators on him every 2 years if he does a good job. You know what I mean? Like if that coordinator and if that quarterback play well, then you're going to be cycling through coordinators. So I think that is like kind of the catch-22. Obviously, you want to have a good leader of men. You want to have a schematically on defense. Like I think that's really exciting what they're doing, and there's a chance like their defense could be really good for years to come. And that's not a bad thing, obviously, but. Yeah, I don't know. Offense is such an important thing in the NFL. Quarterback is the most important position, and if you're switching up offensive coordinators on your quarterback every couple of years, that could be really tough on a guy unless you have like a truly elite player. So that was all part of the arithmetic or whatever when we were talking about like the coaching changes. Is like, man, I just want that offensive coordinator guy that's going to stick around and like bring his like McVay, like just be McVay for the next 10 years.
And again, it's not everything. It's not like to say that you can't have a defensive-minded coach and then all of a sudden they can have no success. I'm just looking at like this weekend's games. I mean, the Chargers taking on the Texans. You got an offensive mind versus a defensive mind. Ravens, I mean, I get Harbaugh as a special teams guy, but I always think Harbaugh's more of a defensive-minded coach going up against Mike Tomlin, who clearly is a defensive-minded coach. Bills, McDermott's defense. Peyton offense. Eagles, you got two offensive coaches there in Sirianni and LaFleur, and then the Bucs go defensive-minded against Dan Quinn, another defensive-minded coach. And it's so funny you think about Dan Quinn. There was so much debate: should they bring Dan Quinn back? And I was on the record. I don't want Dan Quinn. I don't want if we're just gonna hire Dan Quinn. Why'd we get rid of Pete Carroll? It's the same thing.
Right. I said the same exact thing. But
he went out and hired an offensive mind in Kingsbury, who's been great. But now he's going to lose Kingsbury. Whether he loses him this year or next year, he's gone. He's got to, again, recycle and hire another offensive coordinator.
Yep. I don't know, man. I don't know what the answer is. I think there's no – I mean, this is like one of the problems, I think, when you're in the NFL and any – like whether you have an offensive or defensive-minded head coach is like brain drain is a real thing that happens with every time you have a good team. I think this is why the Lions are so lucky. They've been able to kind of have continuity the last few years. Like that's a rare thing. And keeping Ben Johnson and kind of just like having their whole staff come back, and that continuity is like pretty rare among good teams, because as soon as like a one team starts doing good, the rest of the NFL is like, well, I want that system. I want that philosophy or whatever it is. And then they go hire a bunch of different guys. I mean, this is what we saw with like Belichick over the years. Like he lost all his coaches and kind of had to just keep sticking. He just didn't want to work with anyone new. And so he was just like, it's a bunch of the same guys every year. It's just like, I don't know. So that is a real thing that happens for every team. So I don't know if there's a way to avoid it, honestly.
You have a name in mind. You have a philosophy that you would like. I mean, because here would be my answer to my own question.
Yeah.
I would just say, I would have Mike McDonald look in the mirror and go, hey, Mike, what's the offense that gives you the most problems?
Right.
Whatever his answer is, then go find a guy from that offense.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Look, around the league, McVay,
Schottenheimer.
I mean, sure. I don't think that's going to happen. But I mean, if you look around the league, like some of the best offensive minds come from the McVay tree. I know that like the Waldron thing did not work out for the Seahawks. I understand that. But like Kevin O'Connell, LaFleur, I don't know if he necessarily counts as a McVay tree, but they're running, they come from the same like family tree. And you know, there's just like guys around the league. Liam Cohen is a big hot name that's coming up, and it might be a head coach here. So I don't know. I kind of still lean that route, like doing that type of offense. And honestly, like the McVay offense has always been super balanced. I think, you know, going back the years, they've always run a lot. They've always, you know, McVay, for being sort of thought of as like a young wonderkind, like new age guy, is really old school in a lot of ways. Like establish the run, like be really balanced, like have multiple ways to beat you. So I don't know. I just think like sometimes guys aren't good at play calling, and that might have been like what happened with Waldron, like sequencing, designing, like in game adapting and things of that nature. So I guess long way of saying it is I still would like kind of lean towards like one of these McVay guys. You know, Stenovich, I think from Green Bay, is a name that I've seen thrown around that I think is kind of interesting. But honestly, like I think the offensive coordinator, like kind of like the guys that are out there for hire right now, I don't know if like anybody really stands out. Who stands out for you?
Well, the late night talk show host Jon Stewart likes John Gruden.
Right. That's there we go.
In a second. Can you imagine John Gruden calling plays for the Seahawks, doing all those TikTok? Great point, John.
Why banana?
But doing the TikTok videos and doing the what's the boom? Huh. He would do that like every Friday.
18 out of 18? Could do that pregame warm-ups.
Every Friday he'd put that out on TikTok. God, that'd be great, man.
Oh, man.
He's got, I remember Rob Staten a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, had mentioned, because Jake Peets is on his staff. Mm-hmm. And Peets comes from he's a quarterback's coach, I think, or offensive assistant.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, he had mentioned him a few weeks. Yeah, he comes from, again, you know, the McVay, the Rams thing, you know, tree. So maybe the candidate's the in-house guy. Maybe it's him. I don't know. Doug Peterson, just because Doug Peterson's is from here. Hey, did you know he grew up in Bellingham? Sure, anyone knows that.
I think he lives in Ferndale.
Ferndale. It wasn't Bellingham. It was Ferndale. Yeah, Ferndale. He's a local.
I don't know if anybody knew that. If we're gonna get real ultra local with this, like Bellingham is not Ferndale, for the record.
I know. I that's right. Ferndale is a little bit more blue collar, right?
Yeah, it's a little like I would say Bellinghamster. People call them like it's like the county, you know, the county kids,
county people.
Yeah,
that means like missing
county
teeth
folk
and stuff.
Well, I think that's probably, you know, a little bit like the impression. That's the stereotype.
Okay.
Of course, that's not what actually is happening out there.
Hey, Ferndale, I love you and support you. Puck Sports.
Ferndale is a hot real estate market right now, guys.
Ferndale, really?
Yeah, Bellingham is getting too expensive. All the you know, during the pandemic, everyone tried to move up to Bellingham. Now the houses are too expensive, so people are moving to Ferndale.
Buying got a hobo problem up there? Hobo. I said hobo. I didn't say the other one. Oh, Danny. Yeah, you got a homeless problem up there?
Did I cut out there for a second?
You did. You cut out for a second.
I don't know something is going on with my camera.
I had a joke and it was stupid. No, I'll move on. It was a dumb joke. All right. So then, how about Mike McDonald's just glowing remarks about Geno yesterday on his coach's show? Is Geno going to come back?
I was complaining to the Seahawks group chat about this yesterday. Basically, like, dude, just say yes. Just say yes and move on with your life. We don't need to make this a story. Obviously, I think I don't know what's going to happen with that, but like lying as a head coach, like this is probably not good for me to say as a media person because like it creates storylines for us. But like, just go ahead and lie. Just say yes, he's coming back, and then if he doesn't, you know what? Then you can say, well, things changed. Like I don't understand why I didn't just like very strongly say, yeah, he's our starter next year.
I mean,
like what's wrong with that?
The pause and everything. Yeah, I got no reason to say no. So
yeah.
Yeah. Can you imagine Geno watching that going, dude, oh, well, I'm set. Can't wait. So I guess my question would be, I mean, you're going to hire an offensive coordinator. I mean, I just don't think it's a foregone conclusion. He's back. They have a decision to make before March 16th. I think it's very much on the table that he doesn't come back. But I don't know what other options.
Yeah,
they
that's what I was going to say. Is like, okay, so then what? That would be my question. Are we going to go with Sam Howell here? I think we saw how that worked, and I don't think they're going to be in position to draft a quarterback that's going to be able to start right away. I suppose you could reach on a guy like Jalen Milroe, maybe, but maybe by the time the draft rolls around, that guy's a little bit higher on people's boards. I don't know, but I don't know. That seems like, obviously, like, he wasn't perfect this year, but like, why move on from him right now when you don't have another option?
What do you think? Well, okay, what if another option presents itself? What do you think Minnesota ultimately does? Do they franchise him? They franchise Sam Darnold. Yeah. It's amazing how Sam Darnold was great all year long. He had one bad game, and then everyone's like, "Well, see, this is the Sam Darnold we're all used to."
This is what I'm talking about. It's like this is like cold feet night before the wedding kind of deal. Everything's going great, and then you're like, well, I don't know. He started to see ghosts a little bit in that game. He was pretty bad. I think. Yeah, if you would have asked me this like a week ago, I would have been like, they have to at this point franchise him, go another year, see how it goes. If he's like really good again, if they win 14 games or whatever, 12 games plus, then you have to sign him to an extension, and then you can trade JJ McCarthy, do whatever. But I don't think you can go to JJ McCarthy after the year that they've had and be like, all right, well, hopefully this works. Hopefully we're good. Like, I don't know. Like, I just can't see an NFL team doing that.
Do you like the Colin Cowherd trade proposal?
Well, who did
he thinks the Seahawks should go out and get him?
McCarthy? Sure, I'm down for that. Honestly, I would be down for that. I think that would be great. It depends on what you have to give up. You have to give him a first round pick, though, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't want McCarthy because then now I've got my wife that will be fawning all over him, and I don't need that. Okay, I don't want that.
Do you think Seahawk fans want a guy who's out there meditating on the field pregame, doing all the Russell Wilson stuff? I
does he do that?
Yeah, I said this during the pre-draft process. Actually, like, this guy kind of reminds me of Russell Wilson.
Does he do music videos? Does he have a singer like girlfriend? Does he do anything like that?
I do not think so.
Okay.
No, I'm just pitching him shit. Really, I think it is a part of his pregame process to kind of like meditate and whatever. And
does he have a catchphrase? Does he, go Wolverines or go Vikes?
I'd have to look at his Twitter account. He has been tweeting a little bit during this, like during Sam Darnold's great success, kind of like tweeting through it a little bit. Like he'll tweet like, "I love this team." Like,
oh, great heart. Did you see that Sam Darnold being carried?
He's like, "I'm so happy for you.
Love you." You know what would have been full Russell Wilson is that McCarthy should have just been dressed up in full uniform all year long, even though he couldn't play.
Yeah, with the eye black and everything.
Yeah, shoulder pads, just everything.
But
just had the whole package.
I don't know. Like, if the Seahawks wanted to go get him, grab a guy from the KOC, the Kevin O'Connell coaching tree, and I don't know, do that. Like, I would not be against that route. What's his name? McDonald has experience with him, right? They overlapped in Michigan, I believe.
He should have, yeah.
Yeah. So I might know what he's like as a person, but but regardless, like, even if they trade a first for McCarthy, I still would probably hang on to Geno for another year or whatever, and kind of like have that transition season. I don't know. I still think it's kind of weird how people want to get rid of Geno so quickly. Like, is he that bad? I think he's pretty good, honestly.
No, I don't think he's that bad. But I also don't think you can commit $50 million for him.
Yeah,
that's I don't think he's worth it. I don't think he's worth that amount of money.
Yeah, it's always the age-old question, like, exactly how much these guys are worth. I feel like watching Sam Howell run that offense for, like, whatever it is he ran the offense. But I was like, pay him whatever he wants. I don't care. Like, I can't watch this. I can't watch this for a whole season.
It just reminds me too. Schneider last year was like asked about the quarterback room, and hey, you thinking you're going to draft anybody? You going to do anything there? He's like, what are you talking about? We got Sam Howell.
Yeah, and
I'm like, yeah, you got him, but yeah, are you going to get anybody else? Because he's not good. Right. There's a reason he was available.
I know it is. The quarterback situation is always so funny. It's because it just like the Seahawks in particular going through like the John Schneider era. It's like the Charlie Whitehurst thing. Yeah. The Whitehurst thing reminds me a lot of the Howell thing, where it's like, yeah, I like their traits. And I could like see a world in which we strike gold. I think the Drew Lock thing essentially too. Like, I know when they traded for Drew Lock, they're like, maybe this guy can be a thing. And you have to take those swings, but I still don't really think there's anything that showed us that in like Locke, obviously Whitehurst. I don't think anything. I don't have any high hopes for Howell. I think it's kind of funny that he was like a 5th round pick and then they traded a 3rd rounder for him after a year of throwing a whole bunch of interceptions. I don't know. You have to take shots at the quarterback position, and this is where like sometimes maybe you do land a guy like Darnold, sometimes you do land a guy like Mayfield, but I think those guys, these are top 3 picks in the NFL draft. Like those guys were much more highly thought of in the league, and so I don't know. I don't know. I think they should keep Geno. I think they should pay Geno ultimately.
All right, you're going to be probably turning the page, and we've got the playoff games, starting this week. But turning the page to the draft, 18th pick.
Yeah,
right. You can start doing all the mock drafts. Who's going to give me a couple names right now, Danny? And we'll discuss this as we lead up to the draft and all that. But give me a couple names that could be there at 18.
Well, I did a mock draft the other day, and I gave them Tyler Booker, offensive guard from Alabama, just a big old ass kicker. Throw him in there at guard. I think people are going to be like, "Oh, a guard in the 1st round? Are you crazy?" But I'm like, dude, have you seen their offensive line? I don't care if they take 7 straight. I don't know if they have 7 picks this year. I don't care if they take 7 straight offensive linemen. Find some combination of guys that will block, and this offense is going to be really good. Like that is my theory. That's my thesis. I'm sticking to it.
I'm with you.
I think, but this class is interesting because I think outside of the top, and maybe we do this every year, but like outside of the top, like 6 or 7 guys, it's a pretty flat in terms of like talent, all the way through into like the end of the 2nd round. I think there could be like a lot of surprise 1st rounders, the guys that maybe people weren't thinking are going to be 1st rounders. I think there's some very interesting edge rushers in this class. I don't know if that's like a high need for the Seahawks, but there's some guys like in this class that I definitely like. There's some good defensive tackles if they want to bolster their defense. My dream would be a guy like Jalen Walker out of Georgia somehow falling to the Seahawks. I don't know if that will happen. He's kind of getting a lot of buzz right now, but he is a off-ball linebacker that also plays on the edge, has some real interesting pass rush chops, super athletic, super explosive, really big, tough physical guy. I feel like he would just fit like a glove in the Seahawks system. And so he would be like my dream pick with their 1st pick. Get it like he could play linebacker. He could also play edge rusher in certain situations. Right now, that's kind of like the guy I've got circled. But yeah, I'd say like right now, like interior offensive line, edge rusher. There's a couple of really interesting tight ends in this class. Again, not necessarily a big need. And then defensive tackle. That's like the kind of like the position groups I'm sort of circling for the Seahawks area right there. If Malachi Starks from Georgia falls to 18, could happen. He's another guy that I really like. So, I mean,
sounds like you like everybody, Danny. You like everybody in the draft class.
I think again, it's like after the blue chip players, there's just a bunch of like good players, and so you have to be realistic. Like you're probably not going to land a blue chip player at 18.
Last thing before you go.
Yeah.
All right, we got to do it before I talk to John.
Canzano.
We got to go Barge. I don't know if you have somebody in mind. There he goes. There's the Barge. Look at the Barge. Look how beautiful the Barge is. I know it's a container ship. It's the Barge sound. All right. We put somebody on the Barge every week. You're going to like mine that I'm going to put on the Barge. The creators of Landman.
Yeah.
You want to know why I'm putting them on the Barge?
Why is that?
Because Jerry Jones should be on the show every week.
Right?
That was the best acting.
Did you get a little tear going on?
Yes.
Little cry.
It was some of the best acting I've ever seen.
Soft sobbing.
The guy's an owner of a football team, and he's in there. Yeah, I give it away why he's in the hospital, but it was unbelievable. Like when they said, when Demi Moore's character's like, oh, he's in there with Jerry. I'm like, who the hell's Jerry? And then all of a sudden there's Jerry Jones.
Just literally as himself.
And he's an actor now.
I did not know he had it in him.
Give him the Emmy. Give him the Golden Globe right now.
Man, he was good. He was
great.
I was like, that's tugging at the old heartstrings. Honestly, it kind of made me look at him a little different. I'm like, you bought the Cowboys so you could work with your kids?
You know what I was thinking as I watched it, and then I'm thinking about like what's happened in the last few days. F you, Mike McCarthy. I'm on Team Jones.
Yeah.
McCarthy can go F himself.
Let's put McCarthy on the Barge.
Okay, McCarthy. Yeah, McCarthy goes on the Barge. We can always take you off, Mike. Don't worry about it. All right.
Yeah.
Danny, we'll talk to you next week, man.
All right, sounds great.
Hopefully my voice is back. There he is, Danny Kelly from the Ringer, senior staff writer at the Ringer Fantasy Football, Ringer NFL Draft Show. Follow him on X and Blue Sky at Danny B. Kelly. He's with us every single week. That segment brought to you by Georgetown Brewery. Go check out their Georgetown Tavern Beer, easy drinking domestic style lager made with Pacific Northwest barley and Yakima hops. 4.2%, brewed by my friends there at Georgetown Brewery. All right, joining us now. It is the John Canzano Show. It is brought to you by Zeke's Pizza, best selection of pizzas and local Northwest craft beers. Visit Zeke'sPizza.com for more. Follow John on X, John Canzano, BFT, John Canzano on Blue Sky. Oh, my voice. Voice is about 5 minutes from being done.
I'll do the talking here. Hey, first thing,
Unbelievable.
can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
All right, your guest that precedes me every Tuesday.
Yeah, Danny Kelly.
And the Barge, which I love that concept. I'm going to get my graphics team. I have a graphics team, and I'm going to get them on making the Barge a little more branded to the Puck Sports.
Perfect.
It needs to be Puck Sports on the side of that Barge. Come on.
I know.
You
Well,
know?
listen, it's a one-man shop over here. I don't have the video skills to do all of that. I had to search on the internet so I could just find the stupid barge sound.
I
then
got
everyone's
some
like,
people.
it's not a barge, it's a tanker ship. It doesn't matter. It's just the sound.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
Look, we got a lot to talk about. We got to catch
Oh,
up on a bunch of things.
Tons. Yeah, if I miss anything, we'll go through it. Here, I'm going to talk about, I want to talk about Oregon semifinals. We talked last week about Ann McCoy.
Yeah.
I talked to her this past week, get her thoughts on the assistant pool. I want to bring up, you had a great mailbag question from Scott Murphy that I want to bring up as well, and then some thoughts on Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb. Let's start first with Oregon. How just surprised were you to see that?
Well, it was a knockout. It was just like watching, Mike Tyson get knocked out, right? And you're just not used to seeing it. This is the number one team in the country. And look, there were a lot of people that thought Ohio State would beat Oregon. And Oregon was an underdog in this game, but not like that. Not 17-0, then 34-0. The game was over 10 minutes into it, and it was a coaching clinic. Ohio State's got great players. Oregon's got great players, but Ohio State's players were put in position time and again in that game to take advantage of what was going on the field. It was Chip Kelly with a second look at Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoi, and Chip Kelly had his way. I mean, the very first play of the game, Puck, they know Oregon's going to be in cover 3. How do they know? Well, they played them last time, and Chip Kelly's going, hey, this is what they did on first down last time, and they just ran off those defensive backs. They snuck a tight end out. They dumped the ball off. The tight end caught the ball 11 yards downfield. He ran 19 more yards before anybody touched him. 30-yard pass play to start the game. It was the only catch of the game for that backup tight end. You know darn well Chip Kelly had game planned and schemed that and said, all right, scripted, that's play 1 for us because we know what they're going to be in. They had 9 plays that were explosion plays. 9 plays accounted for 270 yards. Those big chunks, it was embarrassing for Oregon, obviously, but I thought Chip Kelly embarrassed Tosh Lupoi. It was just a total mismatch of a coordinator who had called a bunch of games and schemed against a bunch of teams, matched up against a guy who's a really good recruiter, but just not there yet when you talk about X's and O's.
Does it then now just reaffirm some people's belief when looking at Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoi? Hey, great kind of front men, great recruiters, but are they good coaches?
Yeah, it does. And it tells me that Oregon needs to take some of that money that it's putting into coaching staff and it's putting into the NIL collective and now is going to share revenue with players. They need to take some of that money and go out and get some coordinators with gray hair. And Will Stein on the offensive side, he had nothing. He had nothing, to combat what Ohio State was doing defensively. And Tosh Lupoi, same thing. And so the problem in today's college football is a program like Oregon. This isn't new, right? They hired Willie Taggart because he could recruit. And they promoted Mario Cristobal because he could recruit. There were coaching problems in each of those staffs. And now there's a coaching problem with this one. When Oregon has the better players, Puck, they go out and they win. It's easy to call plays. When we're clearly better than you, we can call plays. But when you get into a game against Ohio State or even the game against Penn State in the Big Ten championship, Penn State moved the ball at will against Oregon. They have problems in those games. They also have problems in the third quarter. If you look at their third quarter all season long, it was the worst quarter for them from a statistical standpoint, from a scoring differential standpoint. They struggled in the third quarter because opposing coaches, who are good coaches, maybe don't have the talent that Oregon has, were making adjustments, and Oregon was having some trouble adjusting. So I really look at this game against Ohio State and I say, gosh, Dan Lanning's got a great first punch when he's got the best players. But when you get him into a situation where Ohio State had seen 4 quarters of Oregon earlier in the season, they knew what Oregon was going to do, and they watched him against Penn State in the championship game. Ohio State just came out and had a better plan. They executed it.
What do you think Phil Knight's reaction is?
Disappointing. I looked for him at the game. I did not see him. I don't know if he's under the weather. I did not see him on the sideline. I didn't see him anywhere. And so I think he has to be disappointed. You know, he'll talk about wanting to get to a Rose Bowl. He'll never say national championship is the thing. But we're talking about a guy who's going to turn 87 years old here. And he's poured $1 billion into the University of Oregon, $1 billion with a B, you know, academically and athletically. That there's a huge investment there. And so there is this unspoken sort of pressure to get him a national championship. And when you get that close with a team that had been ranked number 1, team that was the 1 seed in the playoff, I get it. There's problems with the seeding and the bracket. But when you get to that point and you go, okay, we've got to win 3 games to win it all, it's within sight, right? And so I think there's tremendous disappointment. Knight's never going to say it. Dan Lanning's never going to say, we feel like we let Phil Knight down. But, you know, he's not getting any younger. You know, I'm watching him during the Big Ten championship celebration, and he's emotional, and you can tell it means something to him. So I have to think tremendous disappointment. They just laid an egg in that setting. And it reminded me of something Chip Kelly told me years ago when he was at Oregon. He had been promoted from Delaware, right? Or from New Hampshire, where he was game planning against schools like Delaware. And he was there. Oregon was playing Ohio State in this Rose Bowl years ago, and Chip was the coordinator and the play caller. And I said to Chip, you know, how different is it to scheme against Ohio State or to scheme against Delaware? And he said, it's the same. It's all the same. You're just looking to exploit the defense, put your guys in position to succeed. And man, did he do that. And Phil Knight, I have to wonder, is got to be looking over and going, should we have been hired? Should we have hired Chip Kelly? Like, if he was available as a coordinator, should that have been a move that Oregon made? And would Chip Kelly have taken that job, given that Ryan Day and Chip were, you know, pupil and mentor? Really just a lot to unpack there. And Ohio State looks suddenly unbeatable. What do you think Kelly's next step is? College? Or does he want to go back to the pros? I think he sits tight. I think he is. He's been to the NFL. He's seen the pressures of it. Unless there is a perfect situation where somebody's willing to give him total autonomy, let him go out and build the roster. That was a real problem in Philadelphia and in San Francisco for him. You know, he didn't have his guys, couldn't get the NFL players to buy into kind of his, I want to control how you eat. I want to control how you sleep. He's treating them like they were college kids. I think Chip's really happy to be in a situation where he doesn't have to recruit. He can just game plan on the back of a napkin. I messaged with him when he left UCLA, and I said, you get to go be happy and call plays again. And he's like, you know, he alluded to the fact that I had left the newspaper, and he goes, you get it. Like, you get like the having the autonomy and doing what you love to do is important. So I think Chip's going to sit tight there. I do find it interesting that Ryan Day is now coming out and saying, well, in the last couple of weeks, I've had a better opportunity to do more of the actual game planning. So he's trying to take a little bit of the credit there. But no question, Ohio State's investment in those coaches is on both offense and defense has really paid off for them.
Yeah, they were phenomenal. I mean, that Jeremiah Smith guy is just a freak. I mean, It's unbelievable just how young he is and just how dominant he was in that game. Hey, switching over to Washington State, you had that fantastic sit-down interview with Ann McCoy. You released it, and that whole background with the Board of Regents on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day.
Yeah, Christmas Eve. Well, nice little present.
It was a nice little present. I talked to her last week, and she told me when sitting down interviewing her, she said, throughout the interview that $4.5 million was going to be placed in the assistant pool. Again, that was something that we talked about. It had gone from, I think, 5.9. It was going to drop down to 4.5. It was going to drop down even further. Part of the reasons and kind of the disconnect that the Board of Regents and the president and the athletic department had with the football coaches. But she said, no, it's going back to $4.5 million. What does that tell you about maybe their investment now back into the football program?
Yeah, it's huge because now you can go out and you're talking to a different class of assistant and you're talking about retention. And that was a real problem that Jake Dickert had. I still am concerned about the alignment, right? I had a couple of athletic directors, Power 4 ADs, who read that piece on Christmas Eve and reached out. One called me and said, man, they have no alignment there. Alignment is so important. And what we're talking about is this congruency of vision that starts with the regents. And I really do think the regents at Washington State get it. I spoke to a number of them, got one to talk on the record, and they get it. They understand that there's an enrollment crisis going on across universities nationally. And Washington State needs more students coming out of high school to pick Washington State. And so how do you do that? Part of it is the athletics brand. And so the regents get that an investment in football in particular helps kind of raise the brand and make Washington State look a little more appealing. And so the regents are on board with that investment. They are now going to hire a president. They're in the final stages of picking the president. It becomes critical that they know has to share that vision. For whatever reason, Kirk Schultz, the sitting president of Washington State, has taken a left-hand turn when it comes to athletics. He used to be viewed as this guy who was pro-athletics. He's on board. He gets it. Look what he did at K-State. And all of a sudden, for reasons that are puzzling, he doesn't seem to be in alignment with his regents. He wants to be known. Maybe it's a legacy play. He says he wants to be known as the guy who pushed backs. He told Jake Dickert in their big, argument or a professional discussion that they had. He told him, I'm okay being the president that right sizes athletics. Like, nobody's saying that. There's no president at a Power 4 school that's saying that right now. And so it's a strange position for Kirk Schultz, who is a lame duck. As a lame duck, you're supposed to be out here spending like a drunken sailor, right? Leave it for the next guy. Instead, he's over here. He's gone fiscally responsible to the point where he didn't tell his AD you had $2, $4, maybe even $6 million in potential money to plan for. And Ann McCoy, I thought you asked her all the right questions. To her credit, Ann McCoy is in alignment with the regents. So they've got to get that president in alignment. And to your point, the investment that they're saying they're going to make with these assistant coaches, it helps you get better coaches. It helps you retain those coaches because you can say to them now, hey, you don't have to be looking for your next job in week 8 of the season. And I think that was a huge distraction for Washington State this year. They were sitting there at, 18 in the poll and 8-1 and talking about the playoff. And their president is talking about, we're going to cut your salary pool for your assistants to $3.9 million. That's not congruency of vision. There's no alignment there. And I have no doubt that was a distraction down the stretch for Washington State. And I think it cost them.
What's the revenue split that Oregon State and Washington State get from the Rose Bowl? They get it for the next 2 years, this year, next year?
$100 million. And they get that as part of, it was called it was an equivalency payment. So in order for the Rose Bowl to be part of the CFP, there was an agreement where the Rose Bowl would pay the Pac-12 because the Pac-12 used to feed into that game. And it was a $50 million settlement that the Rose Bowl is giving Oregon State and Washington State $50 million this year, $50 million next year. It was 150 total. So they did 50 last year as well. And that was split by all the members. But because there's only 2 members now, Puck, that's 25 mil for Oregon State and Washington State each. And I know we talk about it like it's this war chest. And, I get Oregon State and Washington State officials who tell me, pump the brakes on the war chest thing, like making it seem like we have all this money to spend. But they do. They've got that, that money is going to offset what they won't get in media rights money. And so it's a huge advantage for them. And it's part of that $255 million settlement because the schools that walked away from the Pac-12 were really hoping that they were going to be able to split that $100 million over the next 2 years. And they're not. They didn't get it. The Pac-12 got it. Oregon State and Washington State get to keep it.
So each school's got $50 million over the next 2 years, this year and next year. What are they going to spend it on? I mean, we talk about all the issues that Washington State has, and I'm sure Oregon State's got the same thing. How are you able to spend that any way you want?
I don't know. I think it's up to each campus. And I do see differences in what Oregon State and Washington State are doing. Oregon State is saying we're going to continue to spend. We're not going to cut our budget. We're going to fund like we're a Power 5. We are a Power 5. We believe in that. Washington State, very different mentality. You saw $11 million trimmed from their budget. Then you got a president who's not following the directives of his regents. You know, he's been told go find $2 million. He didn't do it. Didn't even inform his AD. Completely different mindset. But keep in mind, this isn't like an extra $50 million each, right? This money is part of that $255 million settlement that came from the Pac-12 members departing. $65 million of that was the departing 10 members who are paying over this period here, just year and a half, 2-year period. They're paying $65 million. I was told originally by Teresa Gold, the Pac-12 commissioner, that the 65 was being set aside to help acquire schools like Boise State, San Diego State, whatever. So now at 190 total. Now, 100 of that is this Rose Bowl equivalency fund, right? So the other 90 million is CFP payments, it's NCAA tournament units, it's stuff like that, and revenue from other sponsorships and stuff that was coming in. So, you know, if you really look at it, there's a big chunk that it will go towards the operations of the Pac-12, but you look at the budgets, you know, that and we'll get those 990 forms at the end of the year. We'll be able to see how Washington State allocated the money. My sense is that Washington State is going to say, hey, we're just going to use that money operationally. We cut our budget. We're getting less support from campus. While Oregon State is out being really proactive, saying we need more student fees. They went to the state legislature in the state of Oregon. They got $10 million this year towards their athletic budget. Oregon State being much more proactive and much more aggressive. And I really would encourage the regents at Washington State and the new president, when they get in there, to not view athletics as something that can be cut. This isn't like, and I was told by Kirk Schultz, the president there, the current president, hey, I get it. You want us to go all in on athletics, but if we do that, what do we do with the College of Business? What do we do with the College of Engineering? I can tell you this. If you don't have business and engineering students enrolling, you don't have a business and engineering program, and you need athletics for your brand.
Hey, did you watch, great points. Did you watch the FCS championship game, North Dakota State and Montana State?
Yeah, what a great game. College football.
It is. It was the most purest form of college football. And why do you think the College Football Playoff Committee will just take a look at the lower level and go, they've got it right, how they do all of it. Why don't we just model it after that?
Yeah, even
when I mean, like, have all the games on the home campuses of the higher seed, get to the championship game, and have it at the same spot every single year. I would advocate for the Rose Bowl. If they want to come up with something else, fine. So it gives you every year a destination. Hey, the road to the it's perfect. Road to the Rose Bowl.
Love it. Brandon.
And, FCS does it every year at Frisco, Texas. I just think it's such a better format than asking alumni and fans to be like, well, you got to go spend money here. You got to go to this site. Then you got to go to this site. Then you got to go to this site. Who can afford all that?
Yeah. No, they can't. And I talked to a lot of Oregon fans on the way to the Rose Bowl who were saying, hey, we didn't go to the Big Ten championship game because we wanted to go to the Rose Bowl. And then, they were fretting about, if they go to the Cotton Bowl, I'm going to miss out and I'm not going to be able to go to Atlanta. Fans have to pick a trip. You can't expect every fan to go every round. I mean, it's, there's thousands of dollars to go to these games, not to mention the tickets. But, the argument for a long time, Puck, was, hey, these are student athletes. We don't want to take them out of class. Guess what? NAIA and Division III are doing it. The kids at Linfield are making it. Like, well, why can't you figure it out? And so I do think it eventually will creep towards that. You're going to see, but the real answer is television. Television has been reluctant to, do anything that isn't in its best interest. The ratings come out for these quarterfinal games. The lowest rated game involved Boise State, which is the team coming from the smallest market. And I could hear the executives at Fox and ESPN going, well, see, only 517,000 TV households in Idaho. That's why that game was the lowest rated. No, just give us the best football games. Give us compelling football. We'll all watch it. We'll consume it. We'll devour it. I was looking at Montana State, North Dakota State, and I was thinking, gosh, this is real. This is real football. And I think the FCS has a real chance to kind of turn into something like, the College World Series in Omaha. If I'm FCS, I get about branding that as, traditional football. And I think you could take a bite out of what is happening with the CFP.
It was awesome. It was old school football. It's cold. You look, they pan. It's not a big stadium. You pan to the crowd. It's nothing but North Dakota State fans, Montana State fans. There's no stupid Dr. Pepper halftime show. There's no pomp and circumstance. There's no BS. It was just football. And then it was old school football. You got two quarterbacks that rushed for over 100 yards. You've got each of these teams had like 19,000 tight ends that I think could play in the NFL. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was like a throwback to what football used to be. And the coach, the winning coach of North Dakota State said, after the game, hey, we just have a lot of guys, committed to the program, had big deals to go elsewhere, and they wanted to stay here. It was very refreshing watching
the top FCS schools have found an angle too, because the schools at the FBS division have fewer scholarships available for high school athletes. And so there's a bottleneck there. And, even talking with Big Sky Conference coaches who were telling me I'm getting better players than I ever got before at the FCS level. And they feel like they have a chance to retain them because they get them for a year and they sell them on the idea, hey, come to us for 2 years. And if you're that good and you have an opportunity to go to a, D1, big time D1 school, then you go and you have our blessing. But at least they're getting a shot to get the kids. And it's much the same angle that Jake Dickert was taking at Washington State, because there are some schools that you look at signing day, they're not taking high school kids anymore.
Yeah. You had a great question. And again, we're going to come to the end of this. And then if I miss anything, you bring it up. You had a great question in your mailbag section that you do every single week there at johncanzano.com. It was from a reader, Scott Murphy. And it was great. He goes, I don't understand, because the knock against moving the transfer portal is if you move the transfer portal later, you can't do it because semester schools have already started. So you can't do it because then the kids can't transfer in to the new school because school's already started. And Scott asked, well, but when a coach leaves or gets fired, all those kids have a 30-day window from that point to transfer anyways, like Washington State. So kids will be can leave the portal even after the semester has started. So why can't we move the portal then? They already make the exception now. Yeah. Why don't we just make it after the bowl games and everything is completed?
Yeah. And guess what? The truth is the schools often make exceptions. Anybody who's been around, an administrative office at a university knows that, they can get kids in late. They can get you in a week late. They can get you in 10 or 12 days late. Yeah. You don't want to join in the middle of the term. That's unrealistic, but they can get you enrolled in enough units to make you a full-time student. They've got online courses. They have a variety of offerings in the athletic department and the physical education, and with physical education friendly professors that will get you students enrolled and get them in. They do a great job giving advantages to students that play sports. They have early enrollment. They have a tutoring facility. They have academic advisors that are dedicated to the athletes. It would be very easy to onboard athletes late, which bites into the argument that you have to open the portal the day after the championship games and you have to kill the bowl season. I think you could move the season a week or two earlier. You could start the bowl season as soon as possible, start the bowl season immediately after the championship games. And I think, you're still going to get some guys who sit out because they go, hey, I'm out anyway. I don't want to be here anymore. But the idea that you have to allow the student athletes time to get to campus is nonsense. I have seen some wild things done and some wild exceptions made for athletes that, arrived late, needed to be on campus. Oregon brought in Richie Incognito years ago. I don't know if you remember Richie, but he had thrown a kid against a wall at Nebraska,
Yeah.
done some horrible things. Oregon got him enrolled. Like they brought him in the spring, and then 3 days later, Richie did something bad and they got rid of him. But it was this idea that there's so much structure. Yes, they want to sell that publicly. They're academic institutions. They probably don't want the blowback from their professors. They are enrolling people late. But, I've got a kid who is a senior in college this year. They're adding and dropping classes in the first week. Like there's movement anyway. So it's nonsense. It's really an illusion of this academic structure. The truth is, if they want a kid bad enough, the football program wants them, they're going to get that kid in and they're going to get him enrolled.
A year ago today, literally 12 months ago, Kalen, DeBoer, and Ryan Grubb were the hottest names in college football. It may be football. DeBoer, a couple weeks, actually about a week after, like January 7th, they play the game on January 8th, takes the Alabama job. They're 9-4. The seat's warm. If he does that again, he's probably going to get fired. Ryan Grubb got fired yesterday. It's amazing, isn't it? It's just amazing how different you view those two in 12 months.
Yeah. And look, and somebody asked me, did DeBoer make a mistake? Will he have buyer's remorse? And maybe he will. But let's think about what he was facing. He was gonna have a rebuild anyway at Washington. He didn't have Michael Penix Jr. He was gonna lose his coordinator. Grubb was gonna go, and DeBoer was making $4.2 million his last year at Washington, and he goes to Alabama. He gets a 10-year deal at more than $10 million a year. So this was a financial decision for DeBoer that was a no-brainer. Even if Washington had stepped up and said, hey, we're going to bump you to $6 million or $7 million, he's still going. He's facing a rebuild at Washington. He knows that Nick Saban's running for the hills at Alabama, because the dirty little secret is Saban knew he wasn't going to have the best team anymore, got to the playoff and was like, time for me to go. I can ride out here and not end up one of these guys that, ends up, ranked 18th and winning 8 or 9 games and everybody's mad at me. And so Saban beautifully exits. DeBoer takes the job. Now, I don't think his seat is scorching hot like some out there believe, partly because I know Greg Byrne, the athletic director at Alabama. Byrne is tied at the hip with Kalen DeBoer. I mean, if DeBoer goes, I think Byrne's in trouble. And so I think right now, Kalen DeBoer, yes, I'm curious to see what he does next year. He's got to get Alabama in the playoff. That's the expectation at Alabama. But I don't think it's scorching hot. I think this is a case of a guy who's in his first year. Look at the other first-year coaches around the country. A lot of them struggled. A lot of them struggled to replace players that left, jumped in the portal. But I still think if, Ryan Grubb is leaving you and you're going to double your salary and then some, I think most of us are doing that.
All right, what did we miss? Did I miss anything?
I got something that's on my mind lately.
A
couple things. One, how is Oregon State and Washington State, the identity and their approach to spending, so dramatically different? I'm going to dive into that. So look for something from me on that. Like, how are why is this an apples and oranges thing? Yeah. These two schools are in the same predicament, and yet one of them is acting like, hey, full throttle ahead, and the other's going, we don't have the money. Like, why? What happened there? That's the first thing. The second thing,
president, though.
Yeah.
I just feel I think the president has probably a lot to do with that.
And I think Kirk Schultz didn't like that Jake Dickert circumvented his authority. Yeah. He went to the regents, and the regents suddenly said, give him the money. And then there was some foot shuffling that happened after that. All right. Second thing is the Mountain West Conference. Anybody else find it interesting that they added Northern Illinois? Doesn't make sense to me. It makes no sense.
When did that happen?
They're coming in football, right? They're coming in. They want them for football. So why are they adding Northern Illinois? From a media rights standpoint, you can't make enough to justify the travel. It's a loser. So it's curious to me, and it's got me really thinking about UNLV. And maybe, just saying, maybe UNLV isn't as ironclad to the Mountain West as those, a lot of us have been told, because it really does feel like a defensive move to me from the Mountain West. So my eyes on that and my spidey senses are firing.
Okay. Go to johncanzano.com. There's a fantastic story he tells about a teacher back in high school. I mean, it was fabulous. And I just thought I wanted to get up. I read it this morning and I stood up from my desk and kind of applauded the teacher.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're right. You can't do that nowadays. No way. But
Yeah.
I'm like, damn right, man.
He laid hands on a student, folks.
Yeah,
He
damn
laid
right.
hands.
But then you have a survey for people to take place. So if you are a member there and a subscriber to johncanzano.com, go there and take that survey. So
Thanks,
you're
Puck.
doing the Lord's work.
Take care of your voice, man.
Well, you're sick for a week, and then yesterday
I know.
was the first day of middle school basketball practice.
What are you saying? You're shouting?
Well, no, but I'm not yelling at the kids, but I'm yelling, not screaming, but yelling to this is what we, first practice, or we're introducing all of these different drills to them. And halfway through, and I'm like, I turned to Doug, who's our assistant. I'm like, my voice is done already.
Yeah, you got to be careful. And people don't know it's a job hazard. And you know this from all your years of doing this. But if you're not careful, tomorrow will be worse. So don't talk to Puck. Don't make him speak after the end of the show. You need to rest. Okay?
That's what I'm going to do. Bourbon and honey.
And rest. You didn't hear the rest part. You went right to bourbon.
Yeah, well, it's kind of the same thing.
All right.
John, you're the best. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, buddy.
There he is, John Canzano, johncanzano.com, brought to you by Zeke's Pizza, best selection of pizzas, local Northwest craft beers. Visit Zeke'sPizza.com. Follow John on X, John Canzano BFT. On Blue Sky, it's John Canzano. Again, all of his work up at johncanzano.com. That episode will be up on YouTube later, as well on all major podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast, of course, pucksports.com. The last couple of weeks, because the schedule's been all over the place, we were just posting the full show, and that was it, not separating anything. And then I asked people, what do you like? It kind of was like 60-40, maybe 70-30. Just post the whole thing. I don't care. Timestamp it. But there were all the people that, hey, I like it separated. And so we're going to continue to separate them just so it's easier. Maybe you want to watch the full thing or listen to the full show, but you're like, I don't have time right now to listen to the full show. But I really just want to catch out what Danny Kelly said today or what John said today. We'll separate those again starting today. Appreciate, again, all the support all year long, and as we head into 2025 there as well. Before we wrap everything up, we go, Hey, What the Puck, brought to you by Restoration One of North Seattle. Your restoration company lets you avoid the stress of water, fire, and mold damage with their property restoration services. It is locally owned and operated. Make them your first call when damages affect your residential or commercial property. 206-817-8917. Visit them online at restoration1.com, the North Seattle franchise. A little bit, we talked about this with John, but I do really wish college football, the highest level, FBS, Division I, can we just go back to calling it Division I, would really just take a page out of D2 and the FCS. I really do. And just, it makes too much sense. But that's probably the problem. It makes too much sense, so it's never going to be followed through or implemented because these bozos never do what's right. And what the easiest decision is. There's all these issues with, the committee and the seating and the venues. Why don't you just look at the one division that has been doing, all the divisions have been doing it, but the one division right below you that has been doing it for years, and it's been a grand success. Just model it after them, please. Seed it 1 through 12, or whatever expands to 16. No one gets, figure the whole bye thing. We got to figure that mess. But the top 4 seeds get the bye, not the conference champions. And then what we do away with is the traveling. Stop trying to force this playoff into the games. It's not the same thing. I'm watching the Rose Bowl, and I'm seeing Ryan Day and, host the Rose Bowl trophy. Congratulations on winning the Rose Bowl. It's not even the Rose Bowl anymore. It's not the same thing. First of all, I don't want to touch the trophy. You shouldn't be touching it anyways. The real trophy you want to touch is the national championship trophy at the end of the year. So it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything anymore to win the Orange Bowl this week or the Cotton Bowl. Separate them. That whole Rose Bowl, Cotton Bowl, Peach Bowl, all that's done. It's done. You've decided to throw that all away. So throw it away. Get rid of it. But what they should do is every game is at the higher seeds home field, just like they do it in every division of football. Every one. Except this dumb one. That's the most popular one. That's what I don't get. Allow those teams who have the higher seed to have the home games. Stop making your fans travel to all these different sites. It's too much money. All of it. You can't go to the one, travel to one site, then go to 2 bowl sites, or a third if you make it to the championship game. And like the FCS does, just make it the same spot every year. They do it in Frisco, Texas. I'm not saying take it to Frisco, Texas. But have it at the Rose Bowl every year. The road to the Rose. The road to the Rose Bowl. And have the Rose Bowl be the national championship every single year. It's such a no-brainer. And I said this yesterday on X. It's such a no-brainer that it won't be done because they're idiots. And they don't know what they're doing. So that's what I'd like to see. And watching that game last night, it just felt more pure. All right, that's Hey What the Puck. It's brought to you by Restoration One of North Seattle. Oh, my voice is done. Your restoration company lets you avoid the stress of water, fire, and mold damage with their property restoration services, locally owned and operated. Make them your first call when damages affect your residential or commercial property. 206-817-8917. Visit them online at restoration1.com, the North Seattle franchise. All right. Full episode will be up on YouTube later, also on all your favorite podcast platforms. We'll separate. Danny Kelly will be up on YouTube. John Canzano will be up on YouTube and then on the podcast platforms as well. When you're there, please like and subscribe. We're over 4,000 subscribers to YouTube. Let's keep it going more and more and more. So please, when you go there, please subscribe. Also, sign up to be a Pucks Posse member. You get all VIP content when you sign up to be a Pucks Posse member. Full members get full access to the entire show. Daily puck drop, all the free stuff we do, plus all the added bonus content that we do there as well. So sign up and join the conversation. We do this every single day at 10 a.m. and then everything posted up later right after we conclude. I mean, man, it's bourbon and honey right after the show. All right. We'll see you tomorrow, Wednesday edition. Ryan Divish, Rob Staten will join us for another edition of the Daily Puck Drop. Until then, as always, I mean this, I promise to be better.
No shoes, no dice.
Would anybody like to smoke some pot?
Yeah.
I was born to love you. I was born to lick your face. I was born to rub you. But you were born to rub me first.
What do you need my address for?
We'd like to send out a mailer.
Mother of mercy, I don't speak Japanese!